On this day in history, February 3rd, 1637, Tulip Mania collapses within the Dutch Republic. Included in the following is an excerpt from the 1944 edition of the Encyclopaedia Britannica going over the flower. Tulip, a genus, Tulipa, of bulbous herbs belonging to the lily family, Liliaceae. The species are found wild among the northern shores of the Mediterranean, in the Levant, Armenia, Caucasus, northern Africa, Iran, and sporadically across North and Central Asia to Japan. The cup-shaped flowers have 6 regular segments in 2 rows, as many free stamens, and a 3-celled ovary with a sessile stigma, which ripens into a leathery, many-seeded capsule. The species are numerous, and are distinguished one from another by the scales of the bulb being woolly or smooth on the inner surface, by the character of the flower stalks, by the filaments being hairy or otherwise, and by other characters. Owing to the great beauty of the flowers, they have long been favorites in European and American gardens, and have been crossed and recrossed till it has become almost impossible to refer to the plant to their original types. The early flowering Van Thol tulips, the segments of which are mostly scarlet with yellow edges, are probably derived from T. sylvanians, a native of the Caspian region. T. jensenarian, a native of Armenia and central Russia, is the origin of most of the later flowering varieties. T. oculisoli and T. clusiana are lovely species, natives of southern Europe, and T. sylvestris, with elegant yellow flowers, is a doubtful native of England. Owing to the exhortations of Russian naturalists, a large number of new species were discovered in Turkestan and introduced into Europe. Some of these are very beautiful, and render it probable that by intercrossing with the older species, still further difficulties will be presented in the way of identification. These difficulties are further enhanced by the fact that, quite apart from any crossbreeding, the plants, when subjected to cultivation, vary so greatly in the course of 2 or 3 years from the original species, from which they are directly descended, that their parentage is scarcely recognizable. The innate power of variation has enabled the florist to obtain, and ultimately to fix, many remarkable varieties. Millions of bulbs are cultivated in Holland for export every year. Many are also grown in the Channel Islands, especially Guernsey, in the Fen district of England, around Belfast, Ireland, and in the United States. Tulips were introduced in the Low Countries from Constantinople and the Levant in the 16th century. About 1637 they became the subject of an extraordinary speculation known as tulipomania, in which prices for single roots rose to as much as 2,600 guilders. Thousands became bankrupt when the bubble burst. Tulips, which have sprung from Tulipa gessenaria, are arranged in separate classes. One of these, the most important, are early breeders, cottage, and Darwin tulips. There are, in addition, various secondary groups, named bazaars, biblomians, parrots, Rembrandts, and striped tulips, according to their color and marking. Tulips are readily raised from seeds, and the seedlings, when they first flower, after about 7 years' cultivation, are of one color, that is, they are self-colored. Judged by the florist's rules, they are either good or bad in form, and pure or stained, white or yellow, at the base. The badly formed and stained flowers are thrown away, while the good and pure are grown on, these being known as breeder tulips. The breeder bulbs and their offsets may grow on for years, producing only self-colored flowers, but after a time, which is varied and indefinite, some of the progeny break, that is, produce flowers with the vegetation which is so much prized. The flower is then said to be rectified. It is a bazaar when it has a yellow ground marked with a purple or red, a bibliomen when it has a white ground marked with a violet or purple, or a rose when it has a white ground marked with rose color. Tulips flourish in any garden soil that has been deeply dug or trenched and manured the previous season. To secure perfect drainage and greater warmth, a fair quantity of sand or grit should be present. Fresh manure should be avoided, but the remains from an old hotbed or mushroom bed may be incorporated. The best time to plant is in October and November, the bulbs being buried about 4 or 5 inches deep and somewhat farther apart. The best effects are produced in formal beds by planting the same variety in each, to ensure the plants being of the same height and in flower simultaneously.